Hi, my name is Jayoza. I help people give impactful speech with confidence, whether it's one on one, in a small group, or in front of a large audience. I want to talk about something that I see on TV a lot that really ticks me off. And it has to do with journalists interviewing somebody. And typically, right now we're in presidential election, they tend to be presidential candidates. And a lot of times, these candidates do not answer the questions that's asked. And also, a lot of times, the reporters don't ask a lot of tough questions. So, how do you judge whether the interview was any good? So, there are two things that has to be done here, right? The interviewer, let's say if I'm interviewing you, after I asked you, let's say 10 questions, I should grade you on whether I was satisfied with the answers you gave me. So let's say I interview you. After I interview, some of the questions you'll answer, some of the questions you won't answer. I'll go back and give you my report card. And on a 10-point scale, let's say I ask 10 questions, or let's say 10-point scale you use for a number of questions. So if it's 10 questions, 100 is the maximum. If you ask all the questions to my satisfaction, then I'll give you 100. Okay, so that's my report card on your answering my questions, whether I was satisfied or not. That means I could have had a follow up, etc., and you answered them. And I'm pretty satisfied that you answered it. But then who's going to check me whether I even asked a good question? So there has to be a report card on the journalist who's asking these questions. Because a lot of times, I sometimes feel that the journalists just don't know enough to ask really good questions. So there are two report cards here. One is the journalist giving a report card to the interviewer, and the second one is a report card for the journalist. And we need to see that. Without that, we don't know whether there is some agreement that exists between the reporter and the candidate or the interviewer. We don't know how fair these interviews are. I have no idea. Sometimes some of the questions are so obvious that I don't know whether these were all planted questions or these were really tough questions asked. How do you grade these people? Because we have a system in this country where there has to be an element of fairness. And the fairness has to be, if you're a journalist, you go and do your job. Sometimes I feel what's happening is that the journalists, in many cases, are not interested. They are sort of faux journalists. They're more like entertainers pretending to be journalists. They need to generate ratings, so they ask a lot of softball questions to get these people on their shows. But they have no interest of going deep into the questions. Sometimes they try, but then the candidate doesn't answer the question. At that point, they have to come back to us and say, listen, to maintain their credibility, look, I asked them five solid questions. If I had to rate it on 1 to 10, I would give the candidate a grade of 25 out of 50. At least that way we know whether the journalist was satisfied. And then we can determine whether the journalist even asked any questions that were any good. So there are two rating systems that has to exist. Now, I don't know whether this will ever happen, but I think there needs to be, because right now I can't trust whether the journalist is asking a question and getting the response that he or she was expecting or wanted. And the second is whether they are even knowledgeable to ask tough questions. Unless we have that checks and balances, the whole system is essentially meaningless. It's almost like we might as well turn it into an entertainment, call it entertainment journalism rather than hard hitting journalism that's required in a democratic system. So I'm not sure if I'm the only one who thinks there's a need for this, but there has to be something like that. Otherwise, we really don't have journalism. A lot of these people are pretending to be journalists to protect their jobs. And if that's what journalism is, then we might as well just call it what it is. They're nothing but entertainment journalists. Let me know what you think, if you even slightly agree with what I have to say. But I think there is a need where this needs to be examined. Like, how do you make journalism really hard hitting and there are checks and balances so that we know that we can actually trust these journalists and whether they are indeed asking tough questions that need to be asked. That's their job. They got to do it. If they don't want to do it, go do something else. Become a speech coach like me. All right, so let me know what you think, and thank you for watching.